Okay. So within the context of this lecture, what we will do is we will try to develop a web application that demonstrate some of the architectural patterns. Okay. So there are different kind of patterns where we can design different softwares. A pattern is like think like a blueprint. It is like a plan. Uh, so if we follow the plan, according to that plan, we will get a different architecture. For example, if you guys know blueprints where you can find it in your home, right? You have certain kind of homes that you want to build. So you have a plan, you have a blueprint. According to that blueprint, if you build that, there's going to be a certain type of home. Okay, likewise, when we are building softwares, there are certain patterns, there are certain plans that we execute. Some plans are better suited for the better suited for some of the application. So, for example, if you are trying to build a basic web application, okay, if you are going to build a simple REST API which expose information to the world, the I'm not saying it is like the best, and we should always design a web API using NT architecture. No, but it is most of the commonly used architectural patterns which help us to develop applications, um, mainly because that's provide layer separability. Okay, so in NT architecture we have layers. What we call is tiers or layers. So in here, what we understand by uh, n is the number of layers that we're going to use. Okay, so there can be most of the time the common layer number is 3. So most of the time, if you hear 3D architecture, that is meant by, okay, we're going to build an application using 3 tiers. Okay, so we have 3 layers that separate each other from one another. So what we're going to build is an NT architecture. In this scenario, the web applications are more suitable with n-tiered architecture, especially from rather than going a lot of tiers. 3 tiers would be enough. Okay, because rather than going more than 3 tiers, we can have at least 3 tiers, and using those 3 tiers, our application will be conceptually separatable, and it is also easy to us to visualize the application in a manner. Okay, so um, let us create a simple NTR architecture using and one of the most popular languages out there. We will be using JavaScript. Okay, there are other languages. Of course, there is Java, Python, and so forth. Okay, but most of you guys will be familiar or will be working at least JavaScript during your lifetime, because it's everywhere. Now you can develop mobile application, web application, AI application, you name it, anything you can build using JavaScript. So I'll be using JavaScript to develop the simple entire architecture web application. Okay. So in order to develop JavaScript application, I need something called Node.js. Okay, Node.js is like the JavaScript engine which we can run JavaScript application. If you want to run JavaScript, of course, your browser is supported. Okay, your browser, Google Chrome, Safari, Firefox. So all those browsers can understand JavaScript. But what we are trying to build today, what we are trying to build with the REST API, that is not understandable by the browser itself. The browser does not understand these JavaScript. So what we do is we use a special runtime environment called V8 engine. Okay, V8 engine is provided to us by Node.js environment. So we use Node.js to power up V8. So using V8 engine, we can run JavaScript out of our browser, out of uh, out of out of our browser within our local machine. We can run Node.js. Okay, so in order to uh, make these things happen, we need few things. Okay, first thing is we need to make sure that we have Node.js set up and running. Okay, let me share my screen. I think you guys can see my Google Chrome. So I'll go to the website called Node.js, and first of all, you need to download and install it. According to your platform, it can be a Windows, Mac, or Linux. Okay, based on your operating system, install the Node.js version. Okay, probably you will install Windows installer with 64-bit, but if you are in Mac, you can download the binaries. In Linux, probably you will go with 64-bit. And if you follow the instruction, everything works fine. Next thing is that you need to verify whether your installation is correct. Okay, and if your installation is correct, let me think. I think I have your terminal. Okay, if your installation is correct, okay, if you have completed everything, what you can do is you can use a command line. Okay, Windows machines probably have something called command line, or CMD for short. And for Linux and Mac users, we have something similar, what we call a terminal. Okay, to verify your installation. Okay, I think our installation is completed. We have the correct version and everything. We can just come to our terminal and type node -v. Okay, that will indicate the version that you have installed. Right now, I have installed version 19.9. That might be different little based on what you're gonna install. Okay, so in order to get everything started, you need to have Node.js installed. And remember, Node.js is, as I mentioned, it is the engine that gives. Sorry, Node.js is uh, the uh, uh, the place where we can run our application, and we can simply create applications using Node.js. So let me demonstrate a simple example, sample code where we can write and execute a Node.js application. So in order to create application, first I would select a directory where uh, I want to create my project. So give me a second. I will create a directory and advanced software systems. Okay, and I will cd to that. First, I will open where the directory that I'm going to be working on. So currently, I'm going to be working somewhere around here. So you can use whatever the directory that you guys like. And first thing first, you guys need an code editor like VS Visual Studio Code. Make sure you have Visual Studio Code. That is like what I recommend, but there are some other things like Notepad++ or something similar, which will help you guys with developing. So I'm gonna use code editor. So I will use code dot that will indicate I will open a Visual Studio Code within the given location, which is gonna be in here. So I'm gonna open Visual Studio Code, And I have to share it again. Okay, so I have Visual Studio Code open right now. So I'm gonna write a very simple application in here that's gonna say hello world in the in our console. Okay, first I will create a new file. I will call this main dot, the extension is JS, since we are going to be using JavaScript. Okay, and to start it, we will just simply say console log, and we can say, let me zoom in a little bit so you guys can see. There you go, console log and hello world. Okay, now if I have saved it, and basically simply what this is gonna do is it's gonna print hello world in our console. Okay, so let's check it out whether it is working. I will turn back to my console and I will say node space main.js. So basically what this command does is it's gonna execute the main.js, which with the file that we have created using node, and you guys can see it's print out hello world. So basically we can think our application works. Okay, so any questions up until this, anything, just let me know in the chat if you have. Okay, so really simple step. Okay, you guys have to just create an application like this. So if you have any questions, just notify me in the chat. Okay, don't hesitate. Or if you have anything, ask. Just raise your hand and tell me. And next thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna create something little bit advanced. Okay, a little bit advanced in the sense, rather than saying hello world, we will create an API. So we will create a REST API for convenience. So a REST API is an application which will give us back information, which will give us information in a form of JSON file. So if you guys look at a website, something like this, you guys can see the response if you go to inspect, or you can go to view page source, and probably this is the page that we can render. This is not like really well formatted, but um, it's gonna be in HTML form, right? So you guys have a head, you have body, and within the body you will get everything. So this is a normal way of representing the web page, but it is intercepted by the browser and visualize something like this. Okay, the HTML itself is a code that represent information like this, but when the browser gets it, the browser render it out something like this. Okay, so based on these scripts, based on these tags, and based on everything that you guys will encounter is somewhere around in the source code. So basically what we're going to build, we will not build an HTML output. The HTML is one representation. It is a representation that we can show in our application. But in a REST API, we will not REST place REST API. So in a REST API, we won't get our response typically in HTML, but most of the time we will get API or whatever the request that we are returning in form of JSON, something like this. So you guys can see this is a JSON output. REST APIs can be represented in so many other ways, like You can use JSON as the output. You can even type HTML, XML, but most common type of uh, REST API data representation is JSON. Okay, so if you guys go to this URL, okay, you go to this URL, and what you will get is something like this. So rather than if you go to normal website, you will get an HTML, but for a REST endpoint, you will get a JSON endpoint, JSON representation. Okay, so using this JSON representation, we can get an idea about the things that the things that we are trying to communicate. Okay, so in here you guys can see it's a JSON object. Okay, how do I know JSON object? JSON object always start with a curly brace, and it contains keys. This is the key, what we call in here. The key is user ID, and the value is 1. And there's another key called ID, and the value is also 1. Then there is a key called title, key has completed, and they have corresponding values. So this is a representation of information, okay, in JSON. Okay, this is how we represent JSON object. So there are other representations as well, like within JSON, this is an object. There are arrays, and there are like basic types, like this one is a number, this one is a string. So there are basic things like a JSON representation, how it looks like. So we're gonna be developing a simple JSON API or JSON response, something similar to this. Okay, no, it's not gonna be something exactly like this, but when we go to a when we go to a URL that is provided to us, we will get as a JSON response in return. Okay, so in order to uh, run a web server, okay, this is running on a web server. The HTTPS, whatever the URL that we are going, is running on a web server. So we need a web server to run this application and return some information. So this is probably running some sort of web server that we probably will be something like Express or Fast API. We don't know. We can't guarantee what is it's going on. But we can create our own web server, and we can give the information to the outside world. Okay. So how do we create a web server? So we don't need to create a web server from scratch. Okay, web servers are already projects. A lot of projects and libraries are there where we can. There is there are web servers which are created for us, and we can simply use them. Okay, so in order to use those things, we need to know what those things are. So in Node.js, the most popular web server is Express.js. Okay, so Express.js is a popular web server uh, that is running on top of Node.js. So if you want to create a web server, you can use Express. Okay, using Express, we can simply create a, a web server that will run some application. Okay, so we will create a hello world application using Express. Okay, so how do we create Express server? So in order to create an Express server, first we need to install within our project. Okay, we will be using Express, and we need to install this Express server. So think like we are um, trying to install these things in a local machine. Okay, so we are installing another software kind of thing within the project itself. So the Express web server is going to help us to create and display a API. So we need to first have within our project, we need to install the web server within our project. So how are we going to install it? That in order to do that, we have some help with help as well. So the the application web server that we are interested is Express. In order to install within our project, we will use a tool called npm. Okay, so if you install Node.js, npm will be probably will be installed within that. npm stand for Node Package Manager. Okay, so the Node Package Manager is basically going to help you to uh, install applications or install libraries which will be used. Okay, so our library of interest is Express, and how we can install Express within our project, we will simply say npm install Express. Okay, by using this command, we will be installing Express within our project. Okay, so I am within the application itself, and I have installed npm install. By using npm install, I have installed Express. Okay, now if I look back within the application, there are certain changes happened. The first thing is I got something called package JSON, which indicates what are the packages that we have installed. Right now, you guys can see I have installed Express only. If I have any other dependencies, any other libraries, I can simply put it in here, or I can use the npm install command to install those those things. Okay. Uh, all right, and this is like the definition. This is not the actual actual server itself. The actual server itself is going to be under a directory called node underscore module. So this thing have not only Express.js but also other libraries. The reason behind that, Express is not built purely out of JavaScript. It is also depending on other libraries. Okay, so you will find Express here somewhere. Yeah, there you go. So under dot module, you will find Express, but Express has its own package manager, which it is depending on. So if you go to dependencies, so Express is depending on a library called accepts, array flattener, body parser. So these are all the packages uh, Express is depending on. So in order to run Express need these libraries. So those libraries will be installed alongside the Express as well. So under node modules, you will see all the dependencies. So the dependency tree, what we call, is going to go at unless there is no dependency at all. So all the dependencies which we need to run will be within the node module. Okay. So we have all the things to run within the application. Now what we need to do is we need to write a simple application. Okay. So the first thing is that we need to do, we need to uh, within our main.js, we need to import the Express library, or we need to require Express. So unless we require Express, it is not gonna work. So first thing that we need to do, we will import or require Express into our application. So this is going to be a very simple application. So I will just say, okay, I need Express within my main.js. And if I run this application once again using not.main.js, nothing will happen. We just said I need Express, but I did not explain what to do with Express. So we will create application with a few more things. I'll copy all the things and I'll explain it to you guys. So the next line is actually what it's gonna do. So next line is we have request Express, but using that Express server, we will be creating something called app. Okay, so we have Express within our usage, and we are using an instance of the Express, and we call it app. Okay, and we have a variable called port which represent 3000. So this is doing nothing. So we create Express server and we called it app, and we have a port variable called port, and it is having the value 3000. So nothing happens in here as well. So the next thing that we need to do is in order to run the application, we need to start it on a port. Okay, so right now we'll be starting our application, our Express web server in port 3000. So how we going to do that? We're going to say app.listen and the port that we want to run it. Okay, and once it is once the server will take a little bit of time to boot up and everything to get in order. Once the application is completed, once the application is ready to serve, it will say example listening on port and the port number that we are referring here. This is what called a paste folder. That means if you want to print the number 3000 in here, we just have to use this syntax. But remember, we need to use these not single quote, but not double quote. We call this what do you call this? Backslash single quote or something like that. We need to use this in order to use dollar and port. So what it basically going to do is replace the uh, port, whatever the variable it holds. So 3000, and it will say example at listening on port, and it will say 3000. Okay, that is the basic idea of it. So um, so so this is gonna create the application, and this is gonna listen. That means we will be hosting the application in port 3000. So that is the basic of it. I'll simply comment out this section, and I'll try to run this application once more time. Okay. Okay. Oh, sorry. You can see an error occurring in here. Port already address already in use 3000. That means I can't start this application on port 3000. The port 3000 actually I have already started an application on port 3000. So what I have to do is since I can't use this, I will use another port. Let's say port 3003. Okay. So I'll try to run it once again, and you guys can see example app listening on port 3003. Okay, so now we have a web server. Now we have a web server running on port 3003. So the port 3003 is serving as a web application. So now the problem is how we gonna access this? How we gonna access the web application that we are running? So simply we can go to our web browser and we can say local host colon the port number that we have given. So local host represent our machine, or you can have the IP address like 192.127.0.0.0, which is also local host. That means this is our local machine. Within the local machine, try to connect to port 3003. Okay. So right now, local host 3003. Better use local host if you have like IP table. There's going to be some issues. So use local host 3003, and rather than showing you guys an error, it says can't get /. That means the application is trying to go to a place, but it does not respond to us. So let me simply terminate the application by, in Windows, you can simply say Control or Command C, and it will terminate the application which is running on port 3003. Now, if I try to refresh, you guys can see that site is cannot be reached. That means the web server is no longer running, so we can't reach it. Okay, but if we run this application and once again try to run, you can see can't get // So / in web, it represents what we call a root. Root means the starting point. So there is no root. If you go to this web application, there is the web application have no information to show you guys. Okay, so the root is empty, so there is nothing we can show. So we can programmatically say, okay, if somebody comes to root, okay, or the starting point of our application, we will give them some information. We will show them some information. Okay, rather than saying can't get root, we will show some information to them. So in order to do that, first I will stop this, the running application. And the next thing that we need to do is we need to say, okay, if somebody comes to root and the request type they are trying to achieve, they are trying to communicate is get. In here, get means a REST API method we call. If somebody is coming to the root and they are trying to get some, they are executing the get command. By the way, when we execute a command in here, where in normal browser, it is by default it's going to be a get request. We will show you that one in a little bit. And if somebody within the app, we have created the Express app, and within the Express app, somebody is trying to get into our root of our URL, sorry, root endpoint or the starting endpoint, they will get a response. Okay, there are two things. One, what we call a request and a response. The what we will do is we will send a response called hello world. Okay, so if somebody comes to the root endpoint, we will send them a response of hello world. So this is not going to be a JSON, but it's going to be a simple text. Okay, so I will save that and run the application one more time. And if I go to the browser once again, you guys can see hello world showing in our browser. So remember, we have just sent. If somebody comes to the root API, we will send hello world. And I can have much endpoints as long as do not collide. I can have much more endpoints. So I have an endpoint called /Randika. So hello, I can say hello Randika. That means if somebody comes to an endpoint called /Randika or root Randika, I will send hello Randika. Okay. So I need to terminate the running application, clear out and run it again. Okay, I'm running it again. And if I come to root, by the way, it is not showing by default. And if I want to go, if I go up endpoint called Randika, now you guys can say hello Randika. Okay, so you guys can have much as possible. You guys can develop endpoints, so you guys can show information. By right now, we are not representing information in JSON manner. Okay, we do not send JSON. This is something like an HTML. So how we can verify that? Right click on the web browser, go to view page source. You guys can see it is sending a plain value. And if you go right click and go to inspect, you can also see that there are HTML encoding happens and it is showing hello world in here. So basically what we are getting is an HTML response. So nowadays we if you want to exchange information, yeah, we will, as I mentioned earlier, we will not simply send HTML request, but we will send JSON response. Why we use so simply we can communicate using HTML, right? So we got the information, the hello Randika was shown in our browser. So why do we need another format? Why do we need, rather than showing it in HTML, why do we want to show in JSON? Why do we need to send, why another format? The main reason behind that is, say for instance, I want to send this information to a mobile user, okay, or mobile application. In a scenario like a mobile application, what will happen is it will it sometimes it cannot understand HTML, and sometimes HTML is not the way that we want to display everything. We want to display it in another way. So rather than encoding or showing those things in HTML, what we will do is we will send the information that it needs, and using that information, they can render the UI as they like. Okay, that is the basic reason behind. So rather than sending HTML, we will send JSON, and by looking at JSON, you can show and hide whatever you like. Okay, so the main reason that we choose JSON is representation and understanding of different devices.